Between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Barker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the VRRC Touring Car Championship European Tour. The second leg of our European Tour takes us from Spain to France and the Paul Ricard circuit, the home of the French Grand Prix, for another two entertaining tin-top races with these new hybrid Cupras in use for the first time in this championship that are already proving to be a real hit. We're looking forward to another couple of exciting races here tonight. Andy McEwan in the commentary box, as ever, joined by Jack Oliphant. And Jack, a week ago at Barcelona, we were spending most of the night asking questions. We've got a few answers by the end of it. One of those answers was, how good is the racing going to be? The answer, very.
Absolutely, it was sensational. Scott Bugner ended up taking the most amount of points from the evening. Well, actually, he joint top point scorer, I should say. Joel Lask, a little bit of a tease of how the championship looks there. Eric Axelson came home in third as well, but it really was a spectacle to behold. We'd done touring car championships with the VRRC previously, but with the hybrid, slightly different tyres, slightly different weights and everything like that, it really did sort of build up to a great crescendo of racing, and hopefully we'll see the same tonight here at Paul Ricard, and obviously throughout the entire calendar, which you can see on your screens now. This is a second round, as Andy just said. Two races, both 15 minutes, qualifying 10 minutes, so slightly shorter races than we had in previous seasons, but we have a longer calendar in total, and we have a few sort of curveballs in there, I should say, one of which is Monza next race. Next week, no 15-minute races, one 40-minute feature race. So we've learned an awful lot from Catalonia. We're now going to learn even more from Paul Ricard. And then we're going to have to forget it all as we head to Monza and do a 40-minute endurance race, in air quotes. So it's going to be really interesting, Andy. And the rest of the season there just looks spectacular.
It does. A great variety of circuits, and all circuits that have been hand-picked to really suit this touring car with the hybrid. It needs long straights for that hybrid to really work, and so that's why we're going to places like Paul Ricard and Monza and Hockenheim and Spa, and ultimately Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit at the end of the year. So yeah, great variety, great tracks on the calendar. Very much looking forward to those 2 endurance races as well. 2 sprint races in the books then, and as we just saw, Scott Bugner and Joel Lask were the top 2 scorers of the night. That was from the first 2 rounds of the season. Therefore, they are the championship leaders as well. They've got a handy little lead, actually, over Eric Axelsen in third, but then he's 1 point ahead of Kyle Felvers, who is 1 point ahead of Josh Martin and Nicky Taylor, and then Jens Verhoeven, the newcomer to the VRRC, inside the top 10 as well, ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Andy Carroll, with Paul Zanatachi rounding out the top 10. But we are expecting a little bit of a shift of momentum, perhaps, as we go week by week, because we've had some tweaks made to the handicap and ballast system. So as well as the cap system which we ran in the Civic Cup, our most recent championship, we now also add in Success Ballast. So, Jack, those who did well last week, it's a double-edged sword. Yes, they got some good points, but now they've got a bit of extra weight in their cars, and that might just hamper them here tonight.
Yeah, we spent about 25 minutes explaining all the rules and regulations last week, and they've only gone ahead and tweaked a few of them. So if you want to catch up with all the rules and regs, watch last week, because we're not going to be dwelling on it so far this week, that's for sure. We want to talk about actual racing. But yeah, these are what they're racing for. We'll explain the new ballast system and the tweaks to the hybrid slightly when we get into qualifying. But this is what they're racing for. 3 trophies and a driver of the round as well. So brilliant to have these trophies so they can be shipped off to those drivers. I know for in real life racing, I actually have trophies still on show in my house because I can't quite let go of the past. So it's really nice to have them up on show as well. Right, after the prizes, I think it's about that time that we probably head into a hot lap, because qualifying is about to come on your screens. But first of all, we want to see how Paul Ricard is like behind the wheel of one of these VRRC touring car hybrid TCRs. I've lost my train of thought. Here's a hot lap with Dave Marshall.
So here we are in France at Paul Ricard for round 2 of the Virtual Reality Racing Club Touring Car Championship with Hybrid European Tour. Down towards turn 1, a super hard braking zone, and if I'm honest, a really good overtaking opportunity. Not a lot of comeback if a driver manages to get up the inside. The outside driver will always have to give that back. Then through the first chicane here, really a case of bottle, making sure we run as much track as we possibly can without hitting them tyres. And then also through here, making sure we don't go in too quick. We want to focus on getting a good run through there and focus on the exit, because this is the other real key overtaking opportunity. That hybrid system will allow you just to use that on this straight, pull out and around another driver if he doesn't get the best run out that he possibly can. Now through turn 6, just a little modulation on throttle there to make sure we don't push it too far on track limits. And then here, all trail braking through turn 7. This is going to be a really difficult corner going into the race. It might start overheat them front lefts if the drivers don't watch it elsewhere on track. Now for me, probably one of the most difficult corners, turn 8, the most blind apex possible, really in that A pillar, so really hard to pick your mark there, but also another really good overtaking opportunity. Turn 9 and 10, another trail brake, but the focus here is to get back left on track after that tyre stack and get it down the box to get the rotation. It's really, really key that you get the car scrubbed off with speed there, otherwise you'll just run it wide. And there is a lap of Paul Ricard. Make sure you tune in on Wednesday night at 7:30. Make sure you give this video a like and subscribe.
So the circuit Paul Ricard then, of circuit that I think it's fair to say splits opinions. I'm quite a fan of the place, actually. I've always enjoyed driving it, and it does tend to generate some really good racing. This version, though, Jack, is not the full Grand Prix circuit. It's about 2/3 the length, but it includes all of the real highlights. It's got the chicane down the Mistral Straight. It's got the quick right-hander senior at the end of that straight, and then the really technical winding section behind the paddock and towards the pit lane, which we're watching our joint championship leader, Scott Bugner, negotiating now. Certainly an interesting and challenging circuit, and one that I would imagine is going to give these tyres a bit of a workout, even over a short 15-minute race.
Yeah, when you hear about the feedback from Paul Ricard, it's often about the F1 sort of feedback, isn't it? Where there's not maybe that much overtaking and all that sort of thing. But to be honest, in these TCR cars, I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I think there's going to be a fantastic sort of number of places where they can go into overtakes, especially with the hybrid system. And like you say, those tyres, they're going to wear pretty thin. If they're on the soft tyres, that may be fantastic for qualifying, which obviously we're watching now. But as soon as you start to put a few laps in that twisty, windy section in Sector 3, they're just going to evaporate. They're going to dissolve so quickly. So it's going to be interesting to see who goes out on the mediums, who goes out on the hards, and sort of where on earth that they end up sitting towards the end of the race. At some point tonight, I will unravel my tongue. I don't know why it's caught up with me so badly, but yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to it. VRRC haven't been to Paul Ricard that often, so this is going to be a bit of a surprise for everyone.
Yeah, Jack mentions tyres. 3 different compounds of tyre available for the first time in this championship, a soft, medium and a hard. Unsurprisingly, most drivers are on the soft tyre. In fact, all of them with one exception, Mark Hughes, on the hard tyre. Now, that's interesting to me, Jack, because the hard tyre, of course, is quite a bit slower than the soft, but because the lap times are about 90 seconds or so at the moment, he's feeling that he can do the whole session on one set of tyres rather than coming into the pit lane to change. I'm not convinced it's what I would do, but actually he's doing all right at the moment. 8th fastest, albeit 2 seconds off the fastest time, which currently is set by Reece Bell, Scott Bugner 2nd and Eric Axelson 3rd, whilst Rich Hayden, who's been right up there in practice, Jack, jumps into 4th place.
Yeah, impressive by Rich. He's obviously been doing a little bit of practice, trying to figure out what the best configuration is of the circuit and everything. He clearly quite likes it. Scott Bugner in the pits has been relegated down to 3rd as well, with Eric Axelson going less than a 10th of a second to Reece Bell. And to be honest, we haven't seen Reece Bell at the front of the order, Andy, all that much. It's worth noting this early on. Yes, nearly 4.5 minutes to go in qualifying, but Reece is absolutely flying, and fair play to him.
Yeah, he is. Reece Bell only 8/100ths now quicker than Eric Axelson, who has just improved on his most recent lap. But Reece Bell working his way through that chicane then, 12th in the standings after the first night of racing. Didn't break into the top 5. In fact, he didn't even, he had 1 top 10, a 15th in race 1 and 8th in race 2. This is exactly what we were hoping to come, though, from the new ballast system, to really allow those who struggle on one week to bounce back the next. And so far, so good for Reece Bell, who turns his way through in the HFT Academy car, through the long right-hander that brings you on that winding route back towards the end of the lap. Interesting then, Jack, to see Scott Bugner still doing well, despite all the weight that he's carrying now. 3rd fastest in the session right now, just behind this man, Eric Axelson. So a bit of a mix. We've got some familiar names at the front, but also a couple really looking to turn their season around.
Yeah, well, we spoke to Dave Marshall before the series. As Eric Axelson goes to the top of the times by 2.5 tenths, but we'll still just touch on Reece Bell for the time being. We were speaking to Dave Marshall before, and hopefully we'll speak to him between qualifying and race 1 as well. About the ballast system, obviously it's a combination of Success Ballast and sort of the driver rating system that VRRC brought in for the last 2 championships, I believe it's been, especially for the Civic Cup anyway. Reece Bell has only got 5 kilograms on board, the upshot is, and Scott Bugner has 40 kilograms of ballast on board. So, a combination of those 2 things, but it means that Bugner is actually being Reece Bell has reeled in Scott Bugner, and the ballast system clearly is working. And remember, there is no hybrid system to be used during qualifying, so this is out and out pure pace. No sort of fancy tricks with the tactics or anything like that. This is representative.
Yeah, absolutely. This is pure driving ability, and the ability, crucially, to switch these tyres on and get a lap out of them, especially the soft tyres, when they're at their best, because the soft tyres are not at their best for all that long. So we are not seeing a huge amount of improvements coming in at the moment, partly because of that. And I think people like Axelsen and Bell and Bugner have really been able to switch those tyres on nice and quickly. Now, Joel Lask here in 6th position, joint championship leader, remember, with Bugner, is not doing quite as well as his early season championship rival is doing. Bugner is 3rd, Lask is down in 6th place, but only a 10th or so between them. So actually, time-wise, it's very, very tight once you take the top 2 out of the equation. Can Joel Lask do something about improving upon that 6th place starting position then? Yes, he can. He was listening to me clearly, because Joel Lask goes 3rd fastest now and jumps ahead of Scott Bugner. Bugner, though, is also coming towards the end of a lap. Let's see whether or not he can respond.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting and pretty crucial, I imagine, for Bugner. But like I mentioned, although everybody says that you can't overtake a Paul Ricard in the F1, this is TCRs, and TCRs with hybrids as well. There's going to be loads of overtaking, I'm sure. Hopefully that's not the commentator's curse. But I'm sure Scott Bugner will probably want that extra point if he can get on pole position. He's got a lot of time to find, though. Half a second as he came across the line. It wasn't an improvement for him. So he's still in 4th behind Lask, Reese Bell, and our current pole position man, Eric Axelsen.
Indeed, Elliot Dalton-Ayres works his way through the chicane then on what might be his final lap of the session, because a minute left to go. It might just be enough time for him to get around to the end of this lap and start another, not too sure. I've got a couple of the HFT cars working together just behind him, but Dalton-Ayres going it alone here, and 10th place is where he finds himself. The slowest in the session right now is Andy Carroll. He's nearly 15 seconds off pole. Now, Andy Carroll is not 15 seconds slower than Eric Axelsen. I think he's having a few difficulties getting a lap hooked up here. Andy Carroll actually was in the top 10 in both races a week ago, so definitely should be doing better than 15th place. He will have time to finish this lap and just about get on to one more, I think. So Andy desperately in need of an improved lap time here. This has been a bit of a qualifying session to forget for him.
Yeah, it reeks of only having 1 lap, but to be honest, he's had 5, like everybody else pretty much. In fact, a lot of the drivers out there have only had 4. Joel Lask has just come around to complete his 6th, so this will be Andy Carroll's 6th attempt, and with only 10 seconds left, he needs it to be a little bit closer to Kenny Press, if not jumping quite a lot ahead of him. He comes across the line, and he does jump quite a lot ahead of him. 11th place is good enough. It's 132.4 for Andy Carroll. He's not going to be able to improve as the checkered flag has flown, but actually he came across the line just in time, a couple of seconds to spare, so he will get one more lap. Eric Axelsen, and Reese Bell both in the pit, so Scott Bugner, they've both taken the checkered flag. Josh Martin, Elliot Dalton-Ayres as well, Carl Felder, so there's not that many improvements, but I'm sure Andy Carroll will be hoping that he can get at least one more flying lap out of this.
Yeah, we might even see some improvements in this group here, mightn't we? Because Rich Hayden there in the VRRC car is just ahead of Jens Verhoeven. So Verhoeven getting a nice slipstream from Rich, who in turn is getting a draft from Nicky Taylor ahead. So the 5th, 6th and 7th quickest drivers all together. Rich has got it all wrong though and runs well wide into the runoff area, so no improvement for him. What can the HFT pairing do though? Nicky Taylor, who had 1 top 5 finish from the 2 races a week ago, that came in race 2, is currently just inside the top 5 in qualifying, but his teammate Jens Verhoeven is going to be looking to try and beat him if he can. Round they come towards the end of the lap through the left-hander at what would have been turn 14 on the full Grand Prix layout, and into the final turn, this awkward, clumsy, tight right-hander. It is a possible overtaking point. He runs very wide over the curbs as Nicky Taylor and realises that that lap has gone, so it's now down to Verhoeven, who also bails for the pit lane. Andy Carroll then will be the last across the line. 11th place at the moment for Andy. Can he improve again? Yes, he can. Gets into the top 10. That is much, much more like it. So Andy Carroll into 9th place. Eric Axelsen is on pole, though, and we'll hear from him on the other side of this short break. The second qualifying session of the season in the VRRC Touring Car Championship European Tour has just been completed, and for the second week in a row, it's Erik Axelsson, the Swedish assassin, who is on pole position. Erik, thanks for joining us again in the commentary box. You're making a bit of a habit of this.
Oh, thank you, Andy. Yeah, quite a surprise actually to myself, because I really struggled in the TCTs when we did the TCTs, but yeah, I'm liking this car now.
Obviously, pole position last week gave you a second place finish in the first race, so not quite able to get the win. What do you think you're going to have to do differently here today to convert this pole position into a race victory?
Well, I have to stay like a lot more calm in race 2, and like wait for like the right opportunity. I had a bad start last week in race 2, and I got a little frustrated, and yeah, so just trying to take it a little calmer, I guess.
Yeah, I think the racing could be quite intense as well tonight, because there are a couple of places where you can pass, but I think that hybrid is going to prove to be quite useful in finding a way through, isn't it? Yeah,
they sure will be, and there's plenty of space on this track, so I think it will be a very good race.
Well, let's hope so. Erik, we'll let you go and break your final preparations for the race, but congratulations, your second pole position from 2. Not a bad start to the season.
Thank you, Andy.
Erik Axelsson then getting the pole position, as I said, for the second week in a row. Really solid start for him, Jack, and I'm sure he'll be really keen to convert this into a win this time. Jack clearly agrees with me whilst I'm waiting for
Yes,
him
I do agree with you. I do. I just didn't. The mute button didn't agree with you. Yeah, no, it's he lost a fair bit of points towards the likes of Joel Lask and Scott Bugner, so he does need to actually step up this this race. Even though it's a longer championship, he'll still be hoping, obviously, to make that step up and try and put them under a little bit of pressure. Before we get into race 1, though, I'm actually going to have a quick chat with Dave Marshall, my old co-commentator for VRRC. Dave, it's a pleasure to have you back in the commentary box, even if you are now race organizer.
Yeah, it's nice to be, and wasn't that an interesting quality session? Very interesting indeed.
It absolutely was, but it did have the same result as last week with Erik Axelsson. Are you expecting him to come on a little bit stronger? You've obviously been doing some driver training throughout the week as well. It's part of the package here at VRRC.
Yeah, so we the night after we do the race, so it'll be tomorrow night, we basically run a help session that helps people get up to pace with the next track, and also a little bit of a reflection on the previous race and what could have done better. And if I'm honest, Erik has put it Paul, and what a lap that was. Reese Bell, what a standout performance for me, yeah. Putting a P2 on the grid, phenomenal effort by him. But I tell you what, being in the chat after that qualifying, there is a lot of drivers that are very out of position. The likes of Josh Martin, Rich Hayden, them are drivers that don't have a lot of weight on board, and they all said they just didn't put the lap together, but they know they could have done it. So very, very interesting. I think there's a few people absolutely kicking themselves, I think.
You've mentioned the weight there, and that'll nicely segue me into the next question, really. You spent a lot of time trying to make this championship sort of individual compared to the previous championships that we've done at VRRC, one of which is the weight setup, isn't it? Give the ladies and gentlemen a bit of an explanation, because me and Andy were going to, and then we realised you were coming in for an interview anyway. We thought we might as well let you explain it.
Yeah, so essentially, we're a bit unique here at VRRC. So as well as doing a Success Ballast, which I'll explain, we have a handicap system, essentially, which is a bit like golf. You know, it puts everyone on a more of a level playing field and ranks drivers up and down as the seasons go on, and the entire time racing with VRRC. So someone like the likes of Joe Lask or Scott Bugner will have a handicap even entering the start of the season, opposed to someone near the back, someone like John Jones or Paul Laramie. The idea being is that them drivers then weighted up and it evens the playing field more. But to make a championship a little bit more interesting still, The handicap system has got 5 levels, so going up in increments of 5 kilogram, but we've also added Success Ballast, which is based on the championship table. So the top 5 drivers in the championship also get weight. So that's not necessarily drivers that have the handicap. If a driver creeps up into that top 5 in the championship without the handicap, then, you know, they're going to have Success Ballast anyway. So needless to say, if you're a level 5 driver and also a top of the championship, you can have a maximum weight of 50 kilograms. So Joe Lask and Scott Bugner are both not far away from that maximum weight, hence why we're probably seeing them struggle a little bit more here in qualifying.
Yeah, which makes the racing all that more unpredictable, which is one of the reasons why we love motorsport so much, isn't it? So it surely does spice things up a little bit and keeps everybody interested for the entire series as well. Thank you very much, Dave. We're going to let you get back to organising the event because there's less than 2 minutes to go before lights out for the first race here at Paul Ricard.
Not a bother. Chat soon.
Awesome stuff. Thank you very much. Great to hear from Dave Marshall. He does have this way of explaining things far better than we can, which when you think about it is slightly concerning. So cars on the grid then, ready for our third round of the championship. 15 minutes on the clock. And as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, the timing tower giving us some new bits of information now. If you weren't with us a week ago, we'll quickly explain that the green column with little number 15 in it, that is the hybrid use. That number will go down each time the drivers use it. Now, they are able to use the hybrid at any point they wish to within the 15-minute race, even on the first lap. Once they press the button, the hybrid is in use for 10 seconds. They can't switch it off. And then there is a 2-second cooldown period after that 10 seconds elapses before they can use it again. So they can, if they wish, use it all in one big go at the start of the race, or, as I think they will instead choose to do, they will try to save some for later in the race, but keep an eye to that number as it goes down. Also, once the race gets underway, the white column on the extreme right of the timing tower, that will tell us what tyres the cars are on. A 15-minute race, you'd think the soft tyres would be fine, but we did see a little bit last week that the medium tyres seem to come on stronger in the second half of the race, and I think circuit is arguably going to affect the tyre wear a bit more. I think that left front tyre is really going to take a pounding round here, so perhaps those on the medium tyres might just be able to come on towards the front of the field again in the second half of the race. So the green car, Eric Axelson on pole, then Reece Bell alongside him. Then the 2 championship frontrunners, Joel Lask and Scott Bugner, the 2 joint championship leaders. They start on row number 2, and the third row then for Nicky Taylor and Rich Hayden. Nicky Taylor looking to try and get his first podium of the season if he can, and Rich Hayden likewise. The red lights start to come on then. 15 minutes of racing in round number 3 of the VRRC Touring Car Championship European Tour gets underway now with a good start made by Axelson from pole position. Rich Hayden away really well too. Not a great start there from Scott Bugner, and Hayden already into 4th. That might become 3rd on the run down towards the first corner. He dives to the inside line. Now we're turning right here on the short circuit at Paul Ricard. Axelson holds the lead. Lask is up into 2nd place ahead of Reece Bell. So they all get through cleanly. There's a bit of door banging going on through the second 90-degree right-hander, and it is mercifully a clean start with Axelson holding on to the early lead.
Yeah, plenty of people using the hybrid off the line, but actually there's a bit more of a split than there was at Catalunya a week ago, where everybody used it. This time, only about half the grid. Mainly, they were probably saving it for this particular bit, as everybody activates it going down towards turn 6. I was very interested to see how turn 6 might actually separate a few people. I'll explain why in a couple of minutes' time, because Scott Bugner moves his way up the inside of Nicky Taylor. Scott Bugner just didn't seem to move off the start line, and that allowed quite a few people, including Rich Hayden, like Andy Cole, to make their way through. And Nicky Taylor, who's actually fighting back. So as Bugner went very, very wide, Taylor thought, okay, there's an opportunity there, and I'll bang my door up the inside of it. If that's a taste of what is to come for the next half an hour worth of racing tonight, I'm very much looking forward to it, because Bugner and Taylor are putting on a great show here.
Yes, they are. Taylor has to slot back in behind there, despite that attempt at making the moves, and Bugner hangs on to 5th place. Medium tyres, I noticed, for everyone other than Mark Hughes and Kenny Press. Now, according to some info from Dave Marshall, Mark Hughes was saying he actually prefers the balance of the car on the hard tyre over the medium or the soft, so that explains why he's on the hards. Kenny Press likewise, so we'll keep an eye to them in the second half of the race. On board though with Nicky Taylor there, Kyle Felvers filling his mirrors as the two teammates turn into the first corner. Elliot Dalton airs up the inside of Jens Verhoeven and goes 8th position in the number 84 car, winding their way then through at the end of the opening lap, but Axelsen leading already, Jack, by the best part of 3/4 of a second.
Yeah, well, we said he's going to have a strong reaction from last week, getting on that pole again. It looks like he's done exactly that, using the hybrid almost to fend off the likes of Joel Lasker's. Rich Hayden's gone wide, and that's let Nicky Taylor and Scott Bugner through. He's back down to his qualifying position, I think it was, in 6th place. Carl Felvers looking very interested up the inside of the VRRC boss, and I think he's got that move done and dusted as well. Reese Bell up into 2nd place, 3rd place. The timing tower is having a bit of a mare, but it is 3rd, isn't it? With Joel Lask in 2nd place now. So Reese Bell still performing very, very well, better than what we were expecting before we turned our monitors on today.
Yeah, this is really good stuff from Reese. He'll be disappointed, I think, to have dropped down from 2nd on the grid to 3rd into the opening corner, but he's hanging on actually pretty well to Joel Lask ahead of him. The midfield scrum here works its way through the final sequence of corners down towards Virage de la Tour, which is the penultimate corner, this long, tightening left-hander, and then into the final turn, this tight right. Is there going to be a lunge up the inside? There is. There's a gap on the inside line, and Josh Martin goes for it up the inside of Verhoeven. Verhoeven on the wide line has superior traction, jumps on the hybrid, and Josh Martin might now end up losing a place to Andy Carroll.
Yep, Andy Carroll looking very interested after that late sort of push in qualifying, but Josh actually with that hybrid system, and the exit wasn't as bad as maybe he once feared. Oh, there's a bit of a crowbar there at the inside. Elliot Dalton is trying to get past Rich Hayden. Didn't actually work out. Luckily, I don't think there was any contact. There's Nicky Taylor with a big dive up the inside. Is he going to go for 2 places? He's certainly got one on Scott Bugner. Gets a little bit squirrely under the braking and on the exit, but he's actually managed to make it stick. He's on the hybrid straight away. Scott Bugner maybe waited for a second before he hit the button. Is that going to give him a bit more of an impetus going into the next corner? We'll have to wait and see. Nicky Taylor's off the hybrid now, but Scott Bugner's still got that overspeed, and there we go into turn 6. They're going side by side. These two drivers are not letting each other have any room, but it's fantastically clean for the time being. Hopefully that's not the commentator's curse. Reese Bell is a bit of a cork in the bottle at the moment, with Carl Felvers trying to get involved.
Oh, yeah, back up the inside goes Taylor, back into 4th then, ahead of Bugner, who's feeling, I'm sure, a little bit outnumbered here, surrounded by HFT Racing and HFT Academy drivers, just trying to hang on and survive. He drops to 5th then, on board with Kyle Felvers, who now moves up behind to challenge. Bugner going off the road slightly there, opens the door for Felvers, who launches up the inside into the penultimate corner. Is he going to make the move stick? No, out wide, ahead of them goes Reese Bell. This is all getting very congested indeed, and Nicky Taylor might be into 3rd place. Nicky Taylor is into 3rd place. Fantastic opportunistic driving, and Nicky Taylor moves ahead of Reese Bell, who drops down to 4th. Then it is Bugner back ahead of Felvers, and Rich Hayden getting involved as well on board with Rich. Lots of damage done to the windscreen of the VRRC car. He around the outside to the inside, from attack to defence. They're 3 wide ahead of him. Inevitable contact. Out wide goes Reese Bell, and all of a sudden it is unravelling for the man who started on the front row.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit difficult for Reese, isn't it? It's got a little bit difficult for Andy Carroll as well. Not sure how he's ended up being so slow through the first corner. Maybe he got turned around a little bit like that. Carl Felvers, though, into 5th, and as we actually see Andy Carroll, and I believe that's Kenny Press, the number 49. This is Elliot Dalton Ayres and one of the other HFT cars. They seem to be all over the grid at the moment. It doesn't matter where you look, they're in a nice little scrap. Elliot Dalton Ayres just ahead of Reese Bell, actually. Sorry, apologies about that. It's Reese Bell in the HFT car. Of course it is. I was so used to him being at the front of the order. I was a bit shocked to see him in 8th place, but of course he got caught up with all that melee that was going on for that top 3 positions, wasn't it? Now, what I saw there, Andy, was quite interesting in my opinion. Everybody's been using the hybrid to pretty much negate anybody else's advantage. They've all been using it at the same place, hitting the button at the same time. But Carl Felvers really initiated that entire sequence of events by using the hybrid around about now, going into the penultimate corner. Rich Hayden's activated it, Verhoeven's activated it in a similar place, but nobody else was. And that sort of congregated into this sort of massive build-up of people trying to overtake each other, using the hybrid at different places. And it allowed a few drivers to take advantage, but unfortunately it caught the likes of Reese Bell, potentially less experienced, running at the front out. So a bit of a shame for those drivers, but it did spice things up quite a lot.
And that's why the circuits that we've got on the calendar have been chosen, because there is not just one long straight, but 2 or 3 places where you could perhaps use that hybrid, and it generates a bit of a difference in tactics. That was a difference of opinions there between Josh Martin and Jens Verhoeven. Both that was their corner, and in the end it was Martin who barreled through on the inside line. So Josh Martin into 9th position. As further up the order, we're seeing Carl Felvers here on the hybrid, trying to attack Scott Bugner, who chooses to jump on the hybrid a bit later. Look, so Felvers gets alongside, actually gets his nose ahead, but Bugner keeps on coming, and there's contact at senior corner, the fastest corner on the track. Really good car control there from Carl Felvers, and he chops across the nose of Scott Bugner, and the secondary contact sideways this time properly for Felvers. Bugner drops back as well, and Rich Hayden finds himself in 4th position. Ever the opportunist, Rich was in the right place at the right time and gained 2 places.
Yeah, Scott Bugner can probably count himself lucky that Kyle only lost 1 position there, because otherwise there may have been a penalty. He did hit on the brakes to try and let Kyle back on through, which is exactly the same sort of thing that Kyle would have done as well. So nice bit of sportsmanship there, that at least they sort of almost hold their hands up immediately. But look at this, Bugner already trying to force his way back up to have another go at Kyle, but unfortunately for him, he's got Elliot Dalton-Ayres in the way. And if you look at the hybrid systems, the usage, Rich Hayden's only got 2 left, and there's 7 minutes to go, whereas everybody behind him, there we go, there's a nice bit of boost for Scott Bugner to get ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and Reese Bell's actually coming back to have a little bit of a pop at these top 5 as well. Reese Bell around the outside, Andy, that's a little bit ambitious.
Oh, yes, that's not going to work either, I don't think, or it might do. No, Elliot Dalton-Ayres closes the door in his face, but Reese has got significantly more hybrid available than some of those around him. There are 1 or 2, and Rich Hayden definitely one of them, who are going to run out of hybrid at this rate long before we get into the final 5 minutes. Rich is on it again now, so after this 10 seconds have elapsed, he will only have 1 more use of the hybrid. He'll be hoping that he can escape from that group behind him, so that then he can get by through the final few laps without having to rely too much on the extra boost. But, oh, right over the curb goes Kyle Felvers, and that allows Bugner back through on the inside. That was a huge moment, and it costs him 5th place.
Yeah, that was a very odd bit of, I don't know, I wouldn't even say car control, because he wasn't in control of the car, was he? He was almost airborne going through turn 6, but he's managed to get it back, but he's back behind Scott Bugner. Bugner will probably be quite relieved that he doesn't have to go through the whole fight again that he tried to go with Felvers. He can now just focus on defending from him. He's got an extra hybrid, but I can't remember who we were talking to. I think it may have been Josh Martin last week, where you know how many hybrid systems you've got left to use. So I know that Carl Felvers will know he's now using his 3rd. He's only got 2 left after this. But he doesn't know how many Elliot Dalton-Ayres has behind him. He doesn't know that Rich Hayden's ran out of them up ahead of him. And Rich Hayden is about to feel the pain. He's going very defensive, and that was quite an aggressive move over to the inside, I would say. Felvers trying to take advantage of the fact that Scott Bugner's been put offline by launching up the inside. There's a bit more door banging, as there seems to always be at turn number 2 here at the shortened version of Paul Ricard. Scott Bugner using all the power and using all the track and more as well to try and stay ahead of Kyle for the time being, but it's all getting a little bit raucous out there, I would say. And Rich Hayden, I know he's our boss, Andy, but he very much was very aggressive defensive into that turn 1.
I'll tell you what, if Rich Hayden can hang on to this 4th position, I will be massively, massively impressed, because he's got no hybrid left at all. He's again defending through senior, but actually, he's defending pretty well at the moment. He's holding the inside line. That was a bit of a move, though. Back up the inside goes Felvers. Felvers and Bugner have swapped positions so many times already in this race, and this time Bugner gets elbowed really wide, and Elliot Dalton-Ayres comes up the inside as well. Dalton-Ayres will go past him, so Bugner tried to gain 1 place, ended up losing 2, and now Dalton-Ayres up the inside of Felvers as well. Fantastic stuff, and Kyle Felvers ends up way wide on the runoff area. Out through the right-hander they will go. The next corner is a left-hander. That should favour Dalton-Ayres, and indeed it does. He will rattle down the side of Felvers' car. He's getting a helping hand from Bugner as well. 3 wide into the last corner will not work. Inside is Felvers, outside Bugner. Trapped in the middle was Dalton-Ayres, and it might be the latter who comes out of this worst.
And I think Reese Bell is going to be taking advantage of a lot of this. He's got a fantastic run and using the hybrid as well. He's actually already up to 7th. ahead of Dalton Ayres. Will he get past Scott Bugner as well? He's on the inside. No, in fact, that's Carl Felvers, sorry. Reese Bell is on the outside of Scott Bugner. I think Elliot Dalton Ayres is trying to send it. It's pretty much impossible. Every single corner, they will change positions. But for the time, well, Scott Bugner's using a lot of track limits. That is something I will note. Reese Bell, again, looking aggressive up the inside of not only Elliot Dalton Ayres, but also Scott Bugner. Reese Bell actually running around the outside. Is he going to get a nice little push of his HFT teammate Verhoeven, who's joined in on the fight, which is pretty much inevitable. To be honest, I'm surprised the entire field is not behind these drivers by now, because they are just slowing each other down by a significant margin. Josh Martin up the inside through turn number 6 to try and take a 9th place away from Verhoeven. Verhoeven's been spat out wide, managed to keep it together. This is getting very tasty, Andy. It's impossible to call.
It is. This is very frenetic stuff, isn't it? And Verhoeven there, I think, was trying to rejoin the circuit when he already had Josh Martin alongside him. That's what led to that contact and that slide. Rich Hayden still hanging on to 4th place. And now Kyle Felvers is also out of hybrids. This is working brilliantly for Rich, because now the next car behind him has no additional boost. And the next two, Bugner and Dalton Ayres, are down to their last hybrid use. So with 2 3/4 minutes to go, all of a sudden this 4th place is looking a bit more secure. Sideways is Felvers. That was courtesy of his umpteenth bit of contact from Scott Bugner. Those two have made more contact with each other than they had with the tarmac of the circuit, I think, in this one. Almost pushing each other down towards turn number 1. Is there going to be a lunge here from Bugner? Yes, there is. Goes to the inside line, gets the overlap, but Felvers is later on the brakes and just hangs onto the corner. Meanwhile, Dalton Ayres is into the side of Reese Bell's car, and Josh Martin still trying to become a part of that fight as well. The positions, though, temporarily at least, stay as they were.
This is absolutely brilliant. I know you were obviously at the Norris swing for real life TCR action as Reese Bell gets a little bit loose after hitting the curb, but I tell you what, I bet you didn't see as many overtakes as this, and that was substantially a great race apparently as well. But this is very, very intense for the sim world, isn't it? TCR giving us great action yet again. Scott Bugner at the inside there on Carl Felvers. They made contact about 10 minutes ago at that exact corner. I think they gave each other a little bit more room this time. Scott Bugner getting a little bit loose as he was on the curb on the inside, but Carl just about holding on. And with 1 minute and 30 seconds left, Scott Bugner won't know that the two cars in front of him don't have any of the hybrid system left. He'll be absolutely desperate. He might think they've got 3 or 4 opportunities to hit that button and pull away from him, so he'll probably be initiating that on the next straight. But Reese Bell and Josh Martin just behind this battle. They've got more opportunity to make these overtakes. Josh Martin's got 3 left in the last minute. That means we'll probably be going on to the last lap now. Eric Axelson's using his last hybrid system. He's just started the final lap of the race.
Yes, he has, and from what we're seeing, that hybrid boost is worth quite a lot round here, so Josh Martin is the man to watch here, I think, isn't he? Reese Bell, though, actually is on the hybrid and uses it to great effect, drives past Scott Bugner. They both have 1 use of the hybrid left now for this final lap, and they're all still following. Oh dear, following Rich Hayden. Jens Verhoeven was making his own route through turn 1, and it wasn't a quick one. He drops down to 10th behind Dalton Ayres, and Bugner is off. Bugner is in the wall. He's been running wide there on almost every lap, and he did it properly this time. He can't find the gap back on the track, and Scott Bugner will have to rejoin right at the tail of that group. He's got damaged steering, and the number 1 car is in trouble. And don't forget here, Jack, that Joel Lask, his championship rival at the moment, is running 2nd. This could be a big hit in the championship for Scott Bugner.
Yeah, Eric Axelson leading the way, but we'll focus on him as he comes around the final corner, because we have to keep our eyes on Rich Hayden and the battle that's brewing behind him. It's now Carl Felvers free to attack Rich Hayden, who's held on to this fourth place for about 4 laps without any hybrid system. It's been absolutely amazing. It's been courtesy of the 3 or 4 drivers fighting behind him, really, that he hasn't been under that much pressure. But Eric Axelson, he's done what he couldn't do a week ago, and that is lead from the front. Lights to flag victory. The checkered flag is ready to be waved in the face of Eric Axelson. He flashed the lights, and I'm sure he'll be absolutely delighted to get the first victory of the season under his belt. Joel Lask, championship leader, probably going into the second race of this evening, but the story has all been about the fight for 4th. Ricky Taylor was finished off the podium. Rich Hayden holds on to 4th place with Carl Felvers just behind him. Reese Bell ended up on the front row in qualifying, but slipped back down to 6th. But to be fair, he was down almost out of the top 10, so still a recovery drive from him. Josh Martin in 7th, Elliot Dalton Ayres in 8th, Jans Verhoeven in 9th, Scott Bugner ended up with a broken steering rack in 10th place. Like Andy said, he was running very wide there every single lap, and this time just got caught out by the tyre stacks, it seems. Mark Hughes, the only driver on the hard tyres, ended up in 11th, with 12th being Paul Laramie, 13th Andy Carroll, John Jones in 14th, and Kenny Press, we're just watching, rounding out the field. And as he crosses the start-finish line, there we go, he is the last driver to take the checkered flag. We're going to cut to a very short advert, and then we'll have interviews with the top 3.
A dramatic opening race of the night here at Paul Ricard in the VRRC Touring Car Championship European Tour sees a maiden victory of the season for Eric Axelsson. We've had 3 different winners now from the first 3 races of the season, and Eric, for the second time tonight, joins us in the commentary box. Eric, last time we were talking, it was after your second position of the season, and now finally you get that first victory. I'm going to make a bit of a cliche here, a bit of a commentator's cliche, and say that looked very easy. I'm sure you're going to tell me it wasn't, but I'm sure you've had harder races.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. I had, but it's a tricky track. You know, you have to like concentrate all the time. But at the same time, it felt like I felt I had the speed, and like I could control the gap to Joel. So it felt good, felt great.
And crucially, you were able to make an early break, weren't you? So you obviously had some confidence on cold tyres in the early lap. I think you within a lap or two had a second on the rest of the pack, and that just means that you're not having to watch your mirrors, you're not having to defend as much, and you can just get into that rhythm.
Yeah, exactly. That makes the race. It's I could just focus on, you know, like going fast and not like doing any mistakes. So it was great.
Obviously, race 2 is not going to be quite as straightforward for you now with the full reversed grid, but what we saw behind you in that race is that there are definitely places you can overtake, and the hybrid is definitely making a big difference. So having got the win and got those points in the bag now, what would you be sort of satisfied with in race 2?
I don't know. Place ahead of Joel would be nice. Or Scott, but no, I just try to take it easy, and yeah, we'll see where I end up.
We will indeed. Eric, congratulations though on that first victory of the season. Best of luck for race 2.
Thank you.
Eric Axelsson then gets the race victory here in race 1 at Paul Ricard, and he had a pretty healthy cushion at the end of the race over the man who finished in 2nd place, and Jack can catch up with him.
Yeah, Joel, last congratulations on the 2nd place on the podium. We'll be honest, for the second half of that race, or even, you know, the last 2/3 of it, we didn't really get a chance to see any of the podium sitters because the fight for 4th was so intense. Talk us through your race from your perspective.
Well, I know with the ballast, it's going to be pretty difficult, so it was a case of just trying to see if I could sort of go head-to-head with Eric at the start, and it was quite clear he had a lot more pace than me, so my main focus was trying to gap the rest of the pack. because I knew that towards the back end of the race my tyres were going to go off, and it would have been a tough one from there, which has started to happen.
With the ballast, you just touched on it then, and their relationship with the tyres, did you find that here at Paul Ricard the tyres went off a little bit quicker because you had that extra weight on board? Because I believe you're carrying 40 kilograms, which is a significant amount.
Yeah, when I did some race runs, it didn't do anything like the race. It was literally the second or third lap before the end, the tyres just went off completely, and I lost about second half, 2 seconds a lap, and that's when Nicky started catching me. So yeah, I need to be a little bit careful of that, to be honest.
Is that going to sort of change your strategy into race 2? Do you reckon there's any chance of sticking those hard tyres on?
I'm probably going to keep the mediums. I know how the car feels with them. I'm just going to take it a bit easier at the start, not push so much, and just see if I can claw through a few places and then try and push towards the end.
You've got the championship lead now. Eric Axelsson has pulled up a little bit, but because of Scott Bugner's unfortunate incident on the last lap of the race, you've jumped ahead of him by 11 points. Is that in your mind at all? Are you thinking, like, is Eric sort of gunning for you a little bit? You just heard him in the interview there. He wants to just place ahead of you. That's all he really cares about. Is that playing on your mind at all? Are the mind games working?
No, it's a long season, right? Eric's definitely quick, but we'll see how it pans out. It'd be nice to get a good points haul out of this one and continue on to the next race.
Well, good luck, Joel, for race number 2. We'll see you carving through the field, I'm sure.
Nice one. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you, Joel Lask. Second place finish for him. Third place, though, and getting his first podium finish of the season so far, was Nicky Taylor. And Nicky, you had to, unlike the two we've just spoken to, you really had to break out of that battle that was going on through the rest of the top 10. The first few laps for you especially were pretty important, and you made some great moves and some good opportunistic moves as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love this track, and at the end of the day, I know some of the corners you can literally just send a lunge down the inside of people and it will work. So I tried doing that the most I could, and of course, I don't know about some of the other people, but there was a bit questionable driving standards in some of the pack, but at the end of the day, I'm not complaining. I got third, and yeah, it's pretty decent points.
It's not like you had a bad Barcelona either, really. A 6th and a 4th, then a 3rd place here. This moves you now into 4th place in the championship, about 17 off the top. I know it's early days in the championship standing, in the championship campaign, but you're scoring well, you're consistent. When's that first win going to come then?
Next race, hopefully.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I was really good on my tyres here for some reason. They never lost grip for me, and I love how the car handles when it's got worn tyres. So hopefully make some inroads at the start, try not to hit any barriers, and make our way through. But love reverse grids, love how the car handles, so it should be good.
Well, you proved you could overtake in that one, that's for sure. So we will see how things go in the second race for you, Nicky. Best of luck.
Cool, cheers.
Awesome stuff. Nicky Taylor then will begin his final preparations for the second race of the night. We'll take another really quick break, and we'll be back with all of the action for race number 2. So the 4th round of the VRRC Touring Car Championship European Tour is about to get underway. It's a full reversed grid, as always, for our second race of the night, which means that Kenny Press, who finished 15th and last in the previous race, now picks up the pole position with John Jones alongside him, Andy Carroll and Paul Larrabee making up row number 2, whilst at the back of the field we will see our podium finishers. Race winner Eric Axelsson 15th, Joel Lask who was second in that first race, will start 14th, and Nicky Taylor will start from 13th on the grid. So a complete topsy-turvy grid. The hybrid, of course, all gets reset now, so 15 uses of the hybrid for everyone. We saw a lot of drivers using up that hybrid in the first 2/3 of the race. Really, we hardly mentioned hybrid through the last 4 or 5 minutes. Will it be the same story in this one, or will the drivers be a little bit more circumspect with that and try and save it for the end of the race? If anything, this being a reversed grid, you'd expect them to be all out attack from the very get-go. That run into the first corner is going to be particularly important for those at the front of the grid if they're going to try and escape from the rest. So, waiting for the red lights to come on. Kenny Press on the right as we look at it. John Jones on the left. Who gets into the first corner first and who wins round number 4 of the championship? Let's find out. 15 minutes of racing gets underway, then very equal start from everybody, really. No one bursting through the pack this time. John Jones is way slightly better than Kenny Press, and that's because John is on the hybrid and Kenny isn't. So John Jones, look at the way that Kenny Press gets swamped into the first corner, but Jones has they've all gone too far. They're all too late on the brakes. Jones will get the lead. Laramie briefly led but went straight on, and Scott Bugner, Jack, is into second place already. Scott, of course, needing now to bounce back, having lost all that ground at the end of race 1.
Oh, and there's been contact as well in the middle of the pack. Carl Felvis has been half turned around. Looked like Paul Laramie was anticipating going on the GP circuit, didn't he? Even though he's just raced on this one for 15 minutes. Now, Rich Hayden is in the pit lane. That's an instant disqualification. I'm not sure if he started from there, if he even ever got going. There was so much to unpack in that first stretch down to the first corner, and it looks like it's not going to stop. Jens Verhoeven on Joel Lask. Of course, Joel Lask, we've just heard from him, championship leader in 9th place. Won't be very happy that Scott Bugner is already into the race lead because he's overtaken John Jones and Elliot Daltonaire, who actually was fighting with Scott Bugner for a large part of that race 1, is also in the top 4. Look at that lovely cutback. Oh, that's absolutely fantastic on Andy Carroll. It does just a TCR's width going on towards the apex. And yes, there was a little bit of contact, but to be honest, for me, that was an absolutely brilliant overtake. And he's gone through another one on John Jones. This is very opportunistic driving from Elliot Daltonaire. Oh, John Jones.
Jones is off. Jones is pointing the wrong way. Sorry, Jack. Contact there, I think, from Andy Carroll. So around goes John Jones. The early race leader is now at the back of the field. So Bugner leads then. Daltonaire second. Andy Carroll third. Fourth for Mark Hughes, who again has gone for the hard tyres. He is not the only one, actually. Kenny Press and John Jones both on the hards, but certainly Mark Hughes the highest placed of those on the harder compound tyre. There is Kyle Felvis, survived that half spin for 9th at the end of the opening lap. But I'm intrigued here, Jack, to see what Elliot Daltonaire can do from second place, because I got the feeling in race 1 that he had quite a bit of pace, that number 84 car. Just wasn't quite able to break through the traffic. Now he's got good track position. Can he challenge Bugner for the race win?
I don't think you're too far wrong, to be honest. I sort of got that impression that there was a lot of pent-up energy in Elliot Daltonaire's car. He just couldn't quite have the racecraft to make his breakthrough like Nicky Taylor did. Speaking of Nicky Taylor, him and Josh Martin are having a bit of a good ding-dong going into turn 6. And again, bit of contact there. I was about to say Taylor going defensive. Didn't leave that much room on the outside for Josh Martin to fill. Luckily, both drivers have carried on as the HFT teammates of Carl Felvis and Jens Verhoeven swap places. Andy Carroll's getting past Elliot Daltonaire's. And I'll tell you what, this is it's hard work tonight for Elliot, isn't it? Unlike Scott Bugner, unlike Nicky Taylor, he just can't seem to make the break.
No, that's true, actually. Yeah, struggling to get away here, isn't he? And Daltonaire's falling behind Carroll now. That's not what he needed. Andy Carroll looking pretty rapid, actually. Andy was in the top 10 in both races last week, so he's got half-decent pace. Scott Bugner, though, is getting away at the head of the field. Further back, Kyle Felvis up the inside of Paul Laramie. Paul Laramie, who overshot that first corner by quite some distance, needs to be a bit more careful on the brakes now because he's got Felvis up the inside, and Kyle is going to move through. Kyle much improved in front-wheel drive these days and marching his way now towards the pointy end of the field. Through we go then on to lap number 3. Paul Laramie down to 8th place and now has Joel Lask behind him. Now Lask has to be careful here as Felvis almost throws it all away. Joel Lask needs to be careful here. The temptation, Jack, is for Joel to go full attack here, knowing that Bugner is doing well and Nicky Taylor as well up in 4th place. But actually, patience, I think, could really, really help Joel here.
Well, I think Joel has to remember that actually the second place in the championship is no longer Scott Bugner. It's actually Eric Axelsson, who is behind Joel Lask for the time being anyway. And so that's going to be really crucial as Joel Lask gets past Paul Laramie. Jens Verhoeven almost spins Paul Laramie. Josh Martin also gets past Mark Hughes. And I think there's a little bit of a cork in the bottle effect here for Mark Hughes on those hard tyres. Goes very deep. I thought there was going to potentially be contact with himself and Josh Martin. But actually, yeah, as I said, there's a little bit of a cork in the bottle. Carl Felvis initiates the hybrid. Mark Hughes tries to fight that and initiates it himself. Maybe goes a little bit deep into the corner. Allows Carl Felvis just to have that space on the inside, probably very sensibly, as they both load up on Josh Martin. And there's a push to pass if ever I've seen one from Carl Felvis.
I think, in Felvis's defence, I think he was helped along there by Mark Hughes.
Enough.
I think there was contact beforehand. I don't know, I'd have to see it again, but I think that's what was going on. Either way, Mark is the one who loses out because Joel Lask has indeed gone back ahead of him. So Felvis into 5th, Martin 6th, Lask 7th. Really tight line taken by Reese Bell, who is not quite performing in the races as we expected him to after qualifying. Laramie drives right round the outside of him. Brilliant driving from Paul Laramie to move back into 11th position then. Josh Martin on the attack, 6th place now for the green and white machine as he heads out of the chicane. Up the Mistral straight, he's on the hybrid. Kyle Felvis was not. And there, Jack, you could really see the difference that made. Now Felvis is on it, so his hybrid will run out later than Martin's, and he might even get back on the inside. He does. Fantastic.
Yeah, this is brilliant racing. It's a fantastic spectacle to watch, but it's a little bit cautious. We have to be a little bit cautious about calling who's, where's where, because it all just changes around so quickly. Look at that, Josh Martin going wide just allows Joel Lask to nudge up the inside. Speaking of nudging up the inside, he's trying to almost load onto the back wheel of Carl Felvis, and boom, Josh Martin. Is that 2 in 1? No, it isn't. Josh Martin forces Carl Felvis to go a little bit wide, and it looks like through goes potential. I'm just waiting to see. Yeah, there we go. Through goes Joel Lask on Josh Martin, not Carl Felvis. Mark Hughes also trying to get his elbows out and make his way back up towards the top end of the order, or at least towards the top 5. A great cutback on for Joel Lask on Carl Felvis as well through the final corner. They are 2 by 2 almost going down into the first corner, but look at the lead battle.
Yeah, Andy Carroll has closed in on Scott Bugner and now goes ahead of him. Fantastic. Andy Carroll into the lead of the race then. Bugner down to 2nd, and he will now have to try and retaliate if he can, probably on the exit of the chicane. Now, interestingly, Bugner's got 10 uses of the hybrid left. Andy Carroll just the 7. So Carroll's been using the hybrid to close in on Bugner, and now he's going to try and use it to get away, but Bugner's alongside him. They're both on the hybrid. Bugner had a much better exit from the chicane. He's on the outside line heading up the Mistral straight. Now ducks back in the slipstream, back to the inside. He has a couple of extra seconds of hybrid, and that's enough to get alongside and back through into the lead. Scott Bugner back ahead of Andy Carroll, and as they battle away, Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Nicky Taylor are starting to rub their hands with glee because they're getting closer and closer and closer by the corner.
I was going to question how Carroll actually caught up to Scott Bugner. I hadn't even noticed the hybrid system, so fantastic catch there, Andy. Speaking of catches, I thought Andy Carroll was going to have a big slide going through T6, and it hits the curb quite nicely there as well. Runs a little bit wide, but nothing bothering Nicky Taylor and Elliot Dalton-Ayres are actually so bothered fighting between each other that Scott and Carroll really don't have to worry about them for the time being. I think ultimately, I think Scott is in the best position here, hasn't he, Andy? Because he's just been able to basically harvest those hybrid energy usages and just use them for defensive purposes now. In the last 2 or 3 laps, those extra 2 or 3 uses could be the crucial part of getting him the win and potentially even the fastest lap of the race, because of course the fastest lap of the race is worth 3 points, a massive amount. So it's going to be very interesting to see if anybody saves them up to try and use 3 or 4 hybrids in 1 lap.
Yeah, Andy Carroll now, unfortunately, not in a great position because he has been caught by Nicky Taylor, who's going to have a much better run off the chicane here because Carroll outbraked himself slightly and will surely now have to jump back on the hybrid to defend, which he does. All of the top 4, top 5 are on the hybrid button. Bugner the leader. Taylor, though, up the inside of Andy Carroll. He's got the overlap. He's got his nose ahead. He's got the inside line for Senior. And I reckon that the HFT Racing driver is going to go into P2, and this could be real trouble. Scott Bugner, because Nicky Taylor is on a mission. He wants that first victory. He promised us a victory in this race, and he's getting very close to delivering on that. Now he's ahead of Carroll. He's into 2nd spot, and got the fastest lap as well. Nicky Taylor is absolutely flying, and Jens Verhoeven and Josh Martin fly off the circuit. Big contact going into the double right, and it loses them both multiple positions.
Yeah, and actually, Reese Bell is almost getting caught up in that. In fact, Reese being overtaken by both of them, which I'm sure he won't be particularly happy about. We didn't see the reason for that contact, but we do know the ultimate outcome of it, and that's the fact that those two drivers are now scrapping to keep in the top 10, let alone scoring better points up towards the top 6 or 7. So big news a little bit further down the order then. But Scott Bugner still leads. Nicky Taylor in second, Andy Carroll in third, Elliot Dalton-Ayres in fourth, and Joel Lask in fifth. But with only one use of the hybrid left, he may well be a sitting duck for the last 5 minutes. But we saw Rich Hayden hold on to fourth in the first race with no hybrid systems left, so don't count your chickens before they hatch and all that sort of thing. Nicky Taylor's gotten through on Andy Carroll, who looks like he's under attack from Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Jens Verhoeven and Mark Hughes, Paul Laramie, all involved in this scrap as Jens Verhoeven tries to muscle his compatriot out the way, and that is the 495, isn't it, of Mark Hughes as they go side by side into the tight chicane.
Oh, Mark Hughes on the hard tyres, remember, but perhaps at this part of the race he's feeling a bit more competitive. Certainly has some traction off the corner, but Verhoeven hits the tyres and ricochets off into Mark Hughes. He's in the barriers now. That was the world's longest accident, and Jens Verhoeven almost had it saved, but just got into that tank slapper, into the wall. And through it all comes Reese Bell into 9th place, actually. Gets past all three of them. So Reese Bell goes 9th, Hughes 10th, and Josh Martin trying to recover now up the inside of both of them, heading into the double right. He will certainly get alongside Mark Hughes. Can he do anything about Bell? Not for the time being, I don't think. So very close quarter stuff, but Jens Verhoeven's race, I'm afraid, has unravelled completely. Rich Hayden, I notice, having rejoined the circuit, initially having headed to the pit lane, is now back out of the race. So we're down to 14 runners, and at the head of that 14-car field is Scott Bugner. He's 7/10 up on Nicky Taylor, and that gap, Jack, is staying fairly stable, coming down as I speak, but on the whole, not a lot to choose between them, although Taylor did just take half a second out of him. So not for the first time, Jack, I'm talking absolute rubbish.
He's got the fastest lap as well, Nicky Taylor, for the time being. But I think Scott Bugner, has he just gone and beaten that one? No, he hasn't. He's still a second off what Nicky Taylor was able to do earlier on. Medium tyres clearly, falling off a cliff a little bit. We heard, I think it was Joel Lask say that in the interview just before. Oh, it's Josh Martin. Well, I'm not going to blame his tyres then, because I think that was just a miscommunication between him and his brake pedal. Just didn't seem to hit it early enough. Goes very wide. Doesn't lose any positions, though, as Nicky Taylor, look at this, hunkered up to the back of a leading Scott Bugner. Flashing of the lights means he's very interested in taking that race lead, and I think Scott has got the picture at this point. He probably doesn't need those flashing lights to remind him that the HFT car is right behind him.
Yeah, now, out wide he goes. Taylor almost gets to the inside, but we do see the difference in lines quite often through the double right there, because it really tightens up through the second apex. Nicky really needs to try and make this move without it being a hybrid assisted pass, because he's got 2 fewer uses of the hybrid than Bugner. So if he hybrids past him, so to speak, then all that Bugner needs to do is jump on that button and he should be able to defend. So Nicky needs to try and think about a lunge. And remember, he told us after race 1, he's got a few ideas around this circuit of where you can make that lunge. He forces Bugner to defend into the last corner. The better exit now should belong to Nicky Taylor. Well, actually, they're pretty equal, and they both jump on that hybrid button at exactly the same time. Taylor, though, has the advantage of a slipstream as well. Is there a gap on the inside? There absolutely isn't, but he keeps on coming. Nicky Taylor right against the concrete wall. Bugner squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, but couldn't quite close the door enough, and Nicky Taylor does have his nose on the inside line. As they go out of turn 1, he'll have the inside again for turn 2. There was always going to be contact at the apex. Out wide goes Bugner, dodges the tyre stack, and still they're side by side into the chicane.
This is what we tune in for touring car racing, isn't it? That was unbelievable racing respect and great spatial awareness that's led to Nicky Taylor taking this race lead. How long he's going to hold it, we're not entirely sure, but he's only got 2 minutes. And as I said it before, Rich Hayden managed to do it without any hybrid for about 4 laps. So Nicky, I'm sure, will take that and probably try and run with it. Diving into Senor, it's going to be still Nicky Taylor ahead of Scott Bugner. So Bugner's going to have to be a little bit patient after leading the race for so long, Andy. It's a mindset shift now, isn't it? Bugner's gone from defensive to attack. It's easier to chase than be chased. That's the only crumb of comfort that he has at the moment.
And as you made the very good point in race 1, we know that Nicky Taylor's down to his last hybrid use, but Scott Bugner does not. So we know that Bugner, in theory, has quite a big advantage. But look, he's on the hybrid again. It's now down to 2 uses at the end of this one. And that, for me, was a bit of a waste because he wasn't really close enough to Nicky there to do anything with that. Nicky will now just defend into the last corner, park the car on the apex. We're going on to the final lap now. Nicky might just be able to do this because Bugner is again on the hybrid. This is maybe his last chance. To the inside to defend goes Taylor. To the outside goes Bugner. He's got such an overspeed, though, that he will do it. He clears Nicky Taylor long before we get to the first corner. And now it is a straight-up fight. They both have 1 use of the hybrid each. There's 1 lap left to settle it, and Andy Carroll is back with them as well.
I was about to say, to be honest, I'm betting on Andy Carroll if I was anybody. With 2 uses of the hybrid, he can use it on the next straight and then the run to the line potentially. He just needs to stay within earshot of these 2 drivers as they fight it out. They've bought the top 3. There we go. Nicky Taylor's already used them up, but Scott Bugner's already used them up. Andy Carroll has still got 1 to use. All he's doing is trying to use his hybrid now to keep in touch as they go 2 wide going in towards T6. Scott Bugner on the inside. Nicky Taylor trying to get that cutback. How narrow is they going to go? Andy Carroll's got an absolutely fantastic run. We're going to see the difference in lines. An early apex there for Bugner and Carroll as Nicky Taylor tries to get the cutback. Andy Carroll's closing speed is massive as Nicky goes up the inside and bangs Scott Bugner out the way. This is going to be massive, Andy. Hopefully it doesn't end in a crash because we're on the last lap of the race.
Oh, that's not the last bit of contact we're going to see. I'm absolutely convinced of it. Bugner will not have liked that. He's trying to fend off Andy Carroll, though, who sniffs an opportunity for second place. And Andy still has 1 hybrid use left. He's not used it yet, though. And he's into second. No, there's contact. Carroll sideways. Scott Bugner into him. And Scott, I think, will give him that place back. That hands the victory, though, to Nicky Taylor. It's the 4th different winner from the first 4 races. And what a race it was. Race of the season so far by a long way. Nicky Taylor victorious at Paul Ricard. Andy Carroll second. Scott Bugner in 3rd place. Lask comes home in 4th. 5th for Dalton Ayres. And 6th by a nose goes to Eric Axelson. That's important. Getting himself ahead of Kyle Felvis at the end by less than a 1/10 of a second. Then it's Paul Laramie in 8th place. Josh Martin 9th. Reespell in 10th place. That quite the race. What a tactical battle between Nicky Taylor and Scott Bugner. And that, Jack, is exactly what we hope to see from the hybrid. It's not just as simple as it being a push to pass. You've got to think about it. You've got to be tactical about when you use them, how you use them, and how you race, even if you're not on the hybrid. We saw some brilliant side-by-side racing there, even when they weren't using that hybrid boost at all. That was absolutely fantastic race, and as I say, exactly what we wanted to see from this hybrid system.
I can't wait until I think we can interview the top 3 in a couple of minutes' time, because really Scott Bugner had the advantage. He had 3 more hybrid uses going into the last 4 or 5 minutes than the likes of Nicky Taylor, but Nicky's pure pace just allowed him to pull up to the back and all of a sudden started to get into the other driver's heads, and then it was unfortunate of that contact around the penultimate corner. But wow, I can always tell it's a great race by the time I get to the end of it, and I've got a headache because my voice has gone so high. So I think it's about time we actually speak to the drivers themselves and gives us a little bit of a break.
That's a very good idea. Why don't we talk to our 4th different winner of the season then? Well, Nicky Taylor, you promised us a win when we spoke to you after race 1. I'm not going to say I didn't believe you, but I didn't think it was going to be quite as easy as you made out. Mind you, easy is not a word we can use to describe that race. That was fantastic to watch. How did you enjoy it?
Mate, full send everywhere. That was so fun, honestly. I was going forward. I had a little bit of contact with Kyle at the start, so I do apologise for that, but there really wasn't much I could do because Josh squeezed the gap when there was already 2 cars there. So what can you do? You can't do much there, but yeah, just picked through, and at the end of the day, got through to the win. And there was a little bit of contact on the last lap with Scott, but I was always going to go for it, and he left the car's whip gap, so I don't think he can be too displeased when there was a car's whip gap there.
We'll find out in a few minutes. Don't you worry, we'll be asking that question. I want to talk about the hybrid because it really was fascinating in that race. You might not have been completely aware of this because obviously the drivers, you're only really aware of what your hybrid situation is. But once you got into 2nd place, you were chasing down Scott ahead, and he had quite a bit more hybrid availability than you did, but you seemed to be using it at the right point to take big chunks of time out of him, and crucially to make the overtake. But were you worried there that you might actually have used a bit too much hybrid to get to him, that you then wouldn't be able to defend?
No, because of HFT with our a really good team that we've got now. We have Ethan from previous championships on radio, so I was literally getting him to feed me through who's got push to pass and stuff. So I knew how many push to pass Scott had left. So I was literally on the last lap. I was a bit like trying to gauge how many he had left. So I knew he would use one on the back straight towards the start-finish line, and then I knew he'd use one going up to the flat-out right-hander. So I just measured mine and used mine going up to the flat-out right-hander because there was no hope if I didn't use one there.
Well, you used it to great effect anyway. It was an absolutely storming drive, and it's going to do you the world of good in the championship. I think we'll get confirmation of that in a moment or two, but we think you're into second place in the points now. And your season has just been steadily getting better. A 6th, 4th, 3rd, now a win. Do you feel like you've really wrapped your head around this car now?
Yeah, I do. I think it's just getting better with more experience, and I seem to be going better on the medium tyres as well. But hopefully this consistency on the sim and me getting better on the sim can continue through to real life. Because, yeah, that should be brilliant, but at the end of the day, I'm just doing this for fun. I've got no hope or no, massive, ambition of the championships. I'm just doing it for fun and taking it race by race. But, yeah, it should be good.
Yes, well, certainly if that race was anything to go by, we're going to enjoy watching you, if nothing else. Nikki, we'll see you again next week at Monza, but huge congratulations on what was a brilliant race win.
Cool, cheers.
Nikki Taylor then gets a race victory, but, Jack, it was a dramatic final lap for our runner-up, Andy Carroll, and he can tell you all about it now.
Yeah, Andy, let's just cut to the chase. Tell us about those final 2 laps. I bet your eyes lit up when you saw them fighting in front of you.
Nicky obviously was rapid in that race because he caught up to us and left me a little bit in his wake. But yeah, it was just last few laps just watching them and seeing them battling, just thinking, I might still have a chance here. And yeah, right at the second half of that last lap, they really did stop battling and managed to get right involved in it. And yeah, just a little bit of contact there with Scott and the penultimate corner, but I think he very kindly backed out and let me retake second. So yeah, appreciate that. But yeah, that was much better race than the first race for sure.
Although second place is obviously fantastic, I don't particularly want to burst your bubble or anything here, but did you feel like are you almost disappointed with second because maybe there was an opportunity you felt that you could go for that race lead, that race win on the final corner or the run to the line, and it got taken away from you obviously with that contact?
Slightly, yeah. I mean, I was definitely trying to stay close to Nicky through that last corner, and then I had one push to pass left, which I was going to try and use out of the last corner. I wasn't sure if he had any left by then, so yeah. But you know what? Anytime if someone offered me second at any start of any race, I'd probably take it anyway. So I can't be too disappointed. I think it was a good race, good battles, nice and close, clean racing for most of it. So yeah, it was very enjoyable.
Yeah, well, we're glad that you're looking at the positive, because there are an awful lot of positives to look at, that's for sure. Very quickly, before we let you go, Monza next week, a 40-minute race. How's that sort of playing out? That's very different for us here at VRRC, isn't it? It's not something we've done for a while.
Yeah, turn 1 will be fun, won't it?
I didn't want to say it.
Yeah, turn 1, lap 1. Could have a big impact on it. I'm predicting safety car. I think lap 1. But yeah, obviously going to be very, very different. I think is it still the same number of push to passes, isn't it? So
your guess is as good as mine on that one.
You've got to make them last that entire 40 minutes. And obviously, yeah, then we've got the tyre strategy to think of as well. So yeah, in practice, I think it's going to be a lot of people seeing how long they can get out of the hards and the mediums, and what the best strategies there is. But yeah, should be it'd be nice to have that sort of different format and yeah, much more strategic, I think, than we're used to.
Well, good luck for the practice, and hopefully we'll be speaking to you after, well, I was going to say after race 1 next week, but of course there is only one race, so it'll be interesting to see how all the tactics play in. But congratulations on a 2nd place, Andy, a brilliant drive tonight.
Cheers, Jack.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Andy Carroll, what a drive that was to 2nd place. Final interview then is with our 3rd place finisher, Scott Bugner. And Scott, that was it was nearly a win. It was nearly a non-finish, quite honestly, at some points around that final lap. It all got a bit physical. We enjoyed watching it, but is that one of the races that you enjoy being a part of, or was it all just a bit stressful?
No, I enjoyed sort of being part of them races. Fair play to Nicky. I did leave a gap, to be fair. I thought I'd just left just enough just to sort of defend, but he squeezed it up the inside, which was fair enough to him. And then, yeah, apologies to Andy. I just sort of, I wasn't looking on that penultimate corner. I thought there'd be a gap, and there wasn't. And yeah, I tried to slow down as much as I could to sort of let him back through and let him hold his 2nd place. But yeah, no, I did enjoy it. I didn't really have the pace. I didn't do any practice really this week, so that's my own fault.
Given the fact you didn't do a lot of practice, you've still come out of it all right. I mean, you were running well, actually, in the first race. You were in that battle for a podium or a top 5, and then we didn't quite spot what happened, but we hear you had a bit of an altercation with the tyre stack.
Yeah, it jumped out in front of me. I didn't have time to react. Yeah, it's one of them situations. I just lacked a bit of concentration. I was following Kyle so closely that I just turned in probably half a second too early, and it just clipped it and broke the steering. So yeah, it was my own fault. I'll hold my hands up, and I'll try not to do that again.
Well, Monza next week, a completely different format now, of course, with the endurance race. We just heard some of Andy Carroll's thoughts on that. What are you looking forward to the longer race? How do you think that's going to change the end product that we get? Is it going to be just as frenetic, or do you think people might be a bit more patient?
I think you've got to be a bit more patient. You know, it's not a sprint race this time. It's, 40 minutes is a long time. You've got your hybrid to look after. You've got tyres to look after. I've never done a pit stop on this game, so that could be interesting. But yeah, no, I'm quite looking forward to it. I had my racing last weekend, so I haven't really been here, so I haven't had time to practice. So now the excuse is out the window, and I can start to practice a bit more for Monza.
Good stuff. Well, we'll wish you the best of luck with that. But Scott, congratulations on the podium. Another good haul of points for you. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you very much.
Scott Bugner, 3rd place finish then after an entertaining and dramatic night of racing for him. One final announcement to make as well. We've been busy chatting whilst we've been chatting to our drivers about the driver of the round, and although he's already gone, we are going to give it to our race 2 winner, Nicky Taylor, for a fantastic pair of performances. Nicky driving to a 3rd place finish in race 1, but then from near enough the back of the grid to get a sensational win in race 2. So he is our driver of the round. Right then, Jack. Lots to unpack after that. A really exciting night of racing, and this is what it does to the championship standings.
Joel Lask with 88 points, not 70. I think Tom O'Farrell needs to maybe just hit Control R on that one. There we go. There it is. Lucky I had it up as well, isn't it? Joel Lask is still leading, though. He wasn't lying about that. 88 points. Nicky Taylor with 81. Just behind. So you're right. He has propelled himself up into 2nd place, just ahead of Eric Axelsson. So actually, the 2nd and 3rd and 4th has changed quite a lot during this particular evening, but the constant has been Joel Lask at the top. Eric Axelsson, like I just mentioned, 2 points behind Nicky Taylor, but joint with Scott Bugner in 4th. So the 3rd and 4th bang on joint points. So that's going to be very interesting. They're only 9 points behind Joel Lask. Plenty to play for through the rest of this season. Carl Felvis is in 5th, Josh Martin is in 6th, Andy Carroll, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, Jens Verhoeven and Reece Bell round out the top 10. Jens Verhoeven and Reece Bell, well, Reece Bell especially, improving a lot in this particular round. He was very close to getting driver of the round if it wasn't for Nicky Taylor doing what he did. A little bit further down, we see Rich Hayden, who obviously, we get reports, and I think he won't mind me saying, that instead of hitting the push to pass hybrid button, he hit the back to pits button. That is the owner of VRRC and the person who sets the sims up on a regular occasion, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the wrong button on his steering wheel. That's why he disqualified himself for race 2 in DNF. Paul Lowmeans, well, Mark Hughes in 13th, and you can see all the way down to Stuart Vickers, who unfortunately hasn't been here this evening. So that is how the championship looks. I think we have potentially time just to have a look at what else VRRC is up to before I can finally rest my voice, because the drivers have absolutely knackered it this evening. And so, of course, we're obviously on Leagues and Champions. That's what we're doing today. We also have the fun races on a Saturday evening, and there's the time attack. And now I think I just glanced at the social media, and I think it's an Aston Martin F1 car around Silverstone. So if the fantastic race of the weekend wet your whistle and you want to jump onto the sim and try and reenact it, then there is money up for grabs on the time attack. In iRacing, we do special events and fun races as well. Keep an eye out on the VRRC social medias and websites for all that information. And Dirt Rally 2.0, Dave Marshall's favourite sim, they do monthly stages that he sets up as well. So pretty much anything you want to be using out there on your PC, you can get on with VRRC. Go to their website or click the Discord link in the description below.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Jack. Excellent job, as always, with all that. A reminder that we are back racing, as he said, next week at Monza with the 5th round, just the one race next week of the VRRC Touring Car Championship European Tour. It is our first endurance race, the 40-minute race with a pit stop in the middle, and that's going to be a really interesting one with the tyre and hybrid strategy. How is that one going to play out? It's the first of the 2 40-minute races, the second of those coming on the 3rd of August at Spa, with the other 4 events comprising of the traditional 2 15-minute sprint races. Fantastic racing, though, here tonight at Paul Ricard. It's certainly a circuit which has provided lots of close quarters action, and we're looking forward to doing exactly the same thing on the Temple of Speed in Italy at the Monza Grand Prix circuit for our first 40-minute endurance race. Thank you very much to Jack Oliphant for joining me on commentary, and to everyone here at the VRRC, Tom O'Farrell, Rich Hayden, and everybody else. We will see you all again in a week's time. You won't want to miss it, our first endurance race of the season.
Woo!